Hi, Jaclyn. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for talking to me today.
I'm really excited to be here. Talking about travel is always a passion, so pleased to be here.
Yeah, I want to jump right into it, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about guided travel today.
Yep.
I know you have a lot of experience in the industry. Obviously, you come from a family with experience in the industry. I was hoping you could just tell me a little bit about why, from where you sit, you think a traveler might choose to go on a guided tour.
I think with guided touring, I mean, there's so much out there, right? When it comes to destinations that you can travel to, how to put everything together. And the internet has actually over cluttered so much. You don't actually know if you're choosing a hotel in Rome, where it might actually be located, what part of the city it might be in, how far it is from things. So, really, to do all that due diligence and the research in the right way to all those great experiences, too, that if you go individually or you go guided, there's some privileges that you get when you go guided because you have networks and connections, within the regions that you're in. So it just is a lot of ease of service, less, what am I doing? Where am I going? And we get that all the time from family friends. I'm
Yeah.
planning this trip, and you're always like, oh gosh, why are they planning? They don't realize how difficult it is, and they're always asking for help with that. So I think that's where the ease of guided travel, can really be a benefit.
Yeah, and I know, I think the phrase I've heard is drinking from a fire hose is just like
Yes.
trying to get that information just seems almost impossible nowadays for travelers. Since COVID, I know the conversation's a lot of bit about how the travel industry has changed, and I imagine it's been the same for guided tours. I'm curious, how have you seen your customers' needs change, and how has your company managed to meet those new expectations or new needs?
Yeah. So honestly, a lot of what was popular prior to COVID remains popular today. I
Yeah,
think what I've seen change within the traveler with the choices that they're making is they're going for longer periods of time and they're spending more money. That's what we've seen. And I just think that they realize how precious, if you will, travel was, because when you really couldn't get on a plane, cross borders, there were restrictions, all the challenges that came with COVID, and then the reopening of all of these countries across the world. I think travelers just realize that your life is short. You're not
yeah.
guaranteed anything, and you don't know how long you're going to be here. And I think people are just out and they're doing more travel than they typically would.
Yeah, and I know this might seem like a pretty straightforward, easy question, but I hear a lot of advisors when they're qualifying clients now asking, why do you want to travel? I mean, is that something you as a tour operator can see from your clients? I mean, why do most of your clients want to travel? I mean, you mentioned just the need for travel, but are there any specific reasons they mention when they're, getting on some of your itineraries?
For what we hear, because the tour managers, right, the guides are what people truly love. They're a personal concierge to each and every person that's on that tour. So when there's free time, why people travel, they want to experience things, they want to connect to culture, they want to learn. And you can do that within our own country, but you can
Yeah.
do that in other countries. I think it's really about connecting with cultures and with people. And really, those experiences, those moments are what I hear most about why, and just being with other people. I mean, part of guided travel, people think, oh, I'm traveling in, large groups. That's not always the case. There's a socialization piece to it that people, I have heard so many stories of people who have traveled with us that became friends, never knew each other before, and now they're
Yeah.
travel companions and they travel on, guided tours and all other things together because they met on a tour. So, and that I've met people that have met each other and got married. So, I mean, there's
Oh my
so
God.
much with the people piece of it that I think people maybe don't realize, but truly do enjoy about guided travel.
I've heard the same. I heard people feel more comfortable traveling solo now simply because of that, because of how open travelers seem to be to each other nowadays.
Oh yeah, I did a Spain tour on our smart group explorations in March of 2019, I want to say, and there were five ladies that were singles on the tour. One, her husband was home. I forget. I think she lived in Michigan, and she travels on her own because she likes to just be free, and she didn't enjoy traveling with her husband. He wasn't a good travel companion, and so
That's funny.
those really do happen. But that's why they also go guided, was because they knew they'd have other people, other companions on that tour with them. So there is a lot of that too.
Yeah. So I know there's so many travelers and so many travel advisors in particular who are familiar with tour operators traveling on guided tours, things like that. Maybe for the ones who don't, how do tour operators manage to maximize the travel experience? Because we're hearing with the pricing these days, people want as much value for their vacation as they can. And I know guided tours do their best to provide that.
Yeah, I mean, I think with guided touring, right? So you buy in volume. So you're not doing individual one-off. So if you have a tour and you have 50 dates on a tour, you're going to hotels and you're going to be able to negotiate the best possible rates that you can because you have that
Yeah.
volume. And then it's sort of the same, it replicates itself with all of the hotels, all of the, the motor coaches, all the things that put together a tour, all the experiences, the meals, the inclusions. So it helps provide more value because you're bringing larger volume. And you got to listen to the travelers too. Where value comes from is understanding how the travelers are changing. If we were doing things the same as we were doing things 10 years ago, we'd be irrelevant, right? So you really have to listen to the travelers and modernize the touring experience. You have to, there's choice on tour, there's things because people didn't want to always be with the whole group all the time. And there were ways within the guided travel experience that we could evolve that so that it allowed for flexibility, personalization, and choice, just to solve the problems of what the travelers were telling us.
Yeah. I know there's you've managed to be you and your family have been in the industry for a long time. And I know you mentioned how the industry has changed and how the touring industry has changed.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, is there anything unique that you're seeing done in the industry that's sort of managing to leave these travelers fulfilled when they're taking these kind of trips?
I think that the unique thing that that companies are doing now is they're embracing more choice and implementing that into the tour, if that makes
Okay.
sense. We've been doing it since 2015. So we were, I would say, pioneers a little bit in that, but I think you're seeing a lot more of that choice, that sense of freedom, and that flexibility really coming through on itineraries that you see nowadays. I think the important thing is, and different modes of transportation, that's something we've been focused on. I mean, the biggest thing that when we've done, focus groups, talk to travelers, people's concern, fear, whatever you'd call it, if they're traveling to a destination on their own, is how are they going to get from point A to point B? So there always has to be some form of vehicle in some way, shape, or form. So there's the coach when you need the coach, but you can implement trains when that can make for a better experience. You can do tuk-tuks to get to dinner. You can so there's so many different things that you can incorporate in to add value, but also change the stereotype of the guided touring experience. It's not always just on the coach, off the coach. It's actually putting in different ways of transportation that they find more value in also.
I mean, you mentioned the stereotype. Is that the biggest misperception of coaches that you're of guided tours, that you'll be on the coach regardless of where you're going? Like, is that what you're hearing from travelers? Is that something they're surprised about when they get on one of your tours?
I wouldn't say surprised, but yes, that I would say would be what could draw people away from wanting to do guided, not realizing that it can be the value that it can actually bring, right? I mean, back when I used to, I'm dating myself now, back when I was in college, we did motor coach tours. We used to play bingo on the buses, right? So it's like there's that sense of that traveler, but you have to evolve with the travelers. So we don't play bingo on the buses anymore. There's different things that you can do, right? So if you're in Mackinac Island, you're going to play the movie that goes along with Mackinac Island to one, kill time, but to learn about the hotel that you're going to go to when you're at the Grand Hotel somewhere in time. That's with, oh, I can't remember his name, but anyway, it's doing those sorts of things that, can create some value, kill time, and be able to get from one place to another. Because no matter what, if you travel by yourself and you're on an individual or you're with guided travel, you have to, unless you're going to sit in one place and only be in one place, you have to get to see other things. You have to move. You got to keep moving. So, and you got to get there somehow.
Yeah. You know what? With all this retro stuff coming up too, you mentioned bingo. I feel like bingo's the next thing to come, to have a wave
It could
of
happen on
relevancy
our
again.
cell phones. Yes, there's ways that people are playing all these games now. They just don't realize it. They're doing it in a different form.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jaclyn, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It really was a fun conversation, and I learned a lot about guided tours and sort of the operations, things like that too.
Thanks so much for having me.